Yeah, good afternoon, my friends. I was looking at another one of my guidebooks and my handbook, if you will. And while it's an older version, and I know there's more updated versions of these things floating around, it's still a viable piece of equipment and nice and handy thing to have on your shelf. If you're a player, specifically, if you're a GM, it gives you lots of valuable information, especially for handling variant NPCs and stuff. This particular one is called, this tell you how old it is. It's from the 90s. It's the Thieves Handbook, the complete guide to all things thieves. We call them rogues now. Somebody at some point thought, oh, thieves are a little either too limited in what this character actually does, or it's not as PC as it should be, and we're going to make them a rogue. Which, in truth, this is one of those things that they changed that I actually agree with. The rogue is a better description of this because a thief is just a category of a rogue. One of the things they do, a lot of rogues, the scout, the negotiator, the investigator, the burglar, the cut purse, the limits, quite more variety when you just use the term rogue. So that's one of those few changes that I actually agreed with when they made it. The book itself, though, even though it's outdated by modern standards, and like I said, there are newer, updated versions, I'm sure, but that none of every time they update, think about that for a minute. Every time they update an older version, that's taking this and tweaking it, modifying it to resell it to you in a different package. The cover is going to be different, the artwork's going to be different, but there are going to be some subtle changes to the rules in there, and some of the information is going to get removed, modified, or changed. What that, at the end of the day, what that means is, yes, you can use it easier with your more modern version game system, and we're not going to talk mechanics, but you are losing some stuff and or changing the wording of stuff. And if you have two things that are identical but worded slightly different, you actually end up with two different things. So you could look at the old version and go, you know, I can make use of that. And the new version is, well, this is just enough different from this to actually make it so you could do both if you needed to. So it's something worth having. One of the things I liked about these books when they came out was that the idea was to not only to expand on the particular character race, because you have the basic races, and like I said, I've mentioned in previous reviews, the bard's the most complicated for newbies to play. The paladin is one of the most misunderstood, probably the most favorite though, and the most often opted for is the rogue. I don't know of any player who hasn't at least tried to take a stab at playing the rogue. You got your guys that are fascinated with magic, so they stick with the sorcerer, the wizard, that sort of thing. And then, of course, the ones that just the fighters are just easier to deal with, so they don't have to do all the extra stuff, and they like that. So there's nothing wrong with either one of those. But the rogue is the most multi-talented character class there is, because the rogue can do it all to some limited degree. He's the jack of all trades. He can master a few things, but truth is, he can be the fighter. He can be the sorcerer, because he can use get his use magic devices and become proficient in using low level stuff and items fairly well. And he can fight with the best of them and avoid combat easier than most fighters can. And he can, use. He can't use the clerical spells, but he can learn to use magical device and other tricks. A lot of the divine potions and equipment, he can mimic the priest enough to get it to work, and that makes him a very multi-talented individual. If you have a small group of players, having one play a rogue is probably not the bad thing to do, because he can cross class a little better than the others can do. And I've seen a lot of cross classing involving rogues, so you just never let that slip out of your mind. But like I said, now this was one of the first ones they came out with, by the way. There's a whole series of these, as you probably well know, and they actually lifted portions of this out of here and expanded on them to create books of their own. So I find it amusing to some degree, because you can look at the guide or the table of contents, and I know the assassin was lifted out and I made it handbook, because I have a handbook somewhere devoted to assassins. So they lifted a couple of the subclasses out of here and put it into the assassins book. And you know, the acrobat, the adventurer, which I've never quite caught the adventure. Everybody's the adventurer, but whatever. The bandit, the beggar, the bounty hunter, the buccaneer, the burglar, the cut fence, the the investigator, the scout, the smuggler, the spy, the swashbuckler, the swindler, thug, troublemaker, blah, blah, blah. Lots of good stuff. Now, if you have questions on running a thief, if you have questions on that rogue and how to modify things or get the rules, and you need to know how does this guy going to do this, I got to know. This is full of that stuff, and that's what the whole purpose of these handbooks are. It's advanced locks and traps, modifying checks, animal assistance, poisons and sedatives, campaigns without non-weapon proficiencies, mugging, the thief's KO. Armor and acrobatics, the Thieves campaign, a well-defined legal system, counter thief tactics, everything you need to know if you want to set up a campaign deals with the underworld and a thieves guild. Everything's in here. The list of tables for proficiencies, grappling successes, a lot of specialty skills and functions for the thief. Then we got the equipment and the basic knowledge. They call it Chapter 5, the tools of the trade. Picking pockets, mini blades, opening locks, improvised lock pits, finding and removing traps, moving silently, hiding in the shadows, things like camouflage clothing, charcoal, plant dyes, weapon black. A lot of this stuff, actually carries over to the other classes because the fighter next to the rogue, the fighter's the most commonly played, if not the most commonly played. But in a rogue setting, in a Thieves Guild a Thieves Guild campaign or something along them lines, the fighter can back up the rogue, and a lot of the sub skills and information in here that the rogues use can be applied to the fighter as well. So you can actually gain a lot of information. Some character wants to know, well, we want to be stealthy. How do we blacken our skin and our weapons and stuff so they don't shine? And how do we sneak over the wall and quieter and all this? And I says, well, we got the rules for that. These are expanded rules from what's in the guide or in the GM guide and the player's handbooks for a reason, because you're becoming more focused on particular areas of gaming of the campaign. You're going to get more technical, right? That's where mechanical gaming, the term for mechanical gaming comes in. Technical gaming could be an appropriate term for that. Think about that. Like I said, these are good books. Lots of good, valuable information in them. Some of it's outdated. I won't argue that. If you're playing the older version, then it's spot on. It works. You know, Talks about alignment issues, guild leaders, guild backgrounds, experience levels for thieves, the thieves guild. Then it gives some example of thieves skills and some NPCs. The glass cutter. I've had a few players go, I want to learn to cut the glass. Key making set. There's some specialty items and tools in here that you only find in these books for the particular class. Because who else would want to know about a glass cutter, right? What's the barbarian and fighter going to do? Bang, there goes the glass. And the wizard, there goes the glass. What each has its own unique complications and issues, and break a window, you left the evidence behind. Make the window disappear unless you can make it reappear. You left the window. It's more obvious that something's gone wrong. My window's missing, as opposed to say somebody cutting a little hole in one corner so they can put a little wire through and unhook. Because that's what rogues do, right? So, like I said, I recommend it if you can find this book, and I'm sure there's lots of them floating around. I know there's a couple websites that sell PDF versions of this sort of stuff these days. I'd take a gander at it at least. Maybe it's worth tossing on purchasing and adding to your collection of stuff. Like I said, can you have too much of this stuff? Until you argue. Yes. I think I've had a few people, including my wife, go, geez, you got enough of them things. But, there's always something new in the next version. Old and new. Repurpose, recycle. Isn't that the model today? Y'all have a good afternoon, and